So my name is Sarah Elizabeth Rennie. I live outside of Charlottesville, and I work at Albemarle Baking Company and Plenty, which is a like a meal delivery service place. So yeah, still in restaurants. I was born in Greenville, Tennessee, moved to Virginia when I was 6, and went to college in Virginia at George Mason. Where I studied theater. I didn't do anything with food. And then after college, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and that's where I got into food. I went to culinary school for a year and got an internship at Farm and Sparrow Wood-Fired Bakery in Asheville. And after that, it was just all food all the time. Fell in love with wood-fired baking, quit culinary school, moved to Richmond because I heard about Sub Rosa. I think Sub Rosa had only been around for maybe a year or two. The wood-fired baking industry is a very small community. And so it was just kind of natural, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. So that's where I made all of my connections with our local farmers, and that's where I started Two Fire as well, to continue that journey and to keep all of those connections. I love being outside. I ride horses a lot. I used to camp a lot when I had time. So I started cooking outside more. And then I started asking around for artists and local makers to try to build some equipment and build the grills that I have. And I've somehow found people willing to do that. And I had some grills built. And I started cooking for people, and it's just been growing, which is great. But it's the same kind of feeling. It's cooking with fire, cooking with flame, and using, only wood. And I just cook what's around. And living in Scottsville, I have endless amounts of farmers and products that I can use. So I try to keep all of the menus seasonal. So most of my menus have one protein and then 3 or 4 different vegetable sides that are all cooked over fire. I do weddings, I do parties, I do ticketed dinners, I collaborate with other chefs. I mean, I'm so mobile that I can really be anywhere. And now I'm mostly working Two Fire and still just meeting more farmers and meeting the community and being more part of the community. And so it's all worked out, but it was a little scary, just a minute, because it was a really rash decision, but it's all worked out. Being a woman in food, it can have its challenges, but for the most part, the community has been really supportive. If I just keep moving forward and doing what I want to do and saying no to maybe some things that don't feel quite comfortable, or maybe I'm not going to be in complete control. I feel like that's been working for me. Just being able to say no and following your gut. I think cooking with fire, or at least in the wood-fired oven, it takes a lot of cooking from here, like your heart and your gut. And it's not just pressing a button and walking away. You're very connected with what you're doing. From building the fire to making the bread to putting it in the oven, you are connected to it from the very first little part the day before all the way through to the end. Just do what your heart feels because there's no other answer. It's so much fun, and it's hard. But the reward is there so much more than anything I've ever done. Oh my gosh.
Hi. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. That made me cry a little.
It was like your own trip down memory lane.
For sure.
I'm Laura Ann, and I've got here with me Sarah Renie, who is, as you just saw, our featured chef today. And I'm so excited to be talking to her about her path and her life and her craft. So Sarah, Sarah and I actually are both from the same state. We both were born in Tennessee, like you said, which is always a great connection for me. I just automatically love people from Tennessee.
Oh, thanks. It's such a small world sometimes because it is just a teeny tiny little spot, but
Yeah, and I'm from East
comforting.
Tennessee also, which is where you're from Greenville, right? So East Tennessee and Southwest Virginia, these parts of these states here in the United States are they're like their own little culture, their own little subculture. So it's like there's a great kinship, I think, when you find
And an accent.
and accent. That's
I can
right.
always tell when somebody's from that part of either Southwest Virginia or Tennessee because there's just a little, the twang is just a little different.
That's right. It comes out when you're angry or excited. So tell us a little bit about some of your earliest memories of food and how you think that maybe shaped or was ignited in maybe your early life, or maybe it was later for you, but I'd love to hear some of your recollections.
Sure. I actually, growing up in Greenville, I lived there until I was about 6 or so. But my family had fast food restaurants. We had a fast food chain, a franchise. So
Wow.
it started out as this restaurant called Burger Chef. And then when I'm not sure how old I was, it was so long ago, it turned into Dairy Queens. So every day my mom would take me to the restaurant and we would sit in a booth and have ice cream or, a burger or French fries. And it was just so good. And I remember as a little kid kind of going over to different tables and talking to the regulars that were there and sitting down with some of them. I'm sure they were like, who is this? But so I remember sitting down and talking to, one lady in particular. I think her name was Frances, but I called her Princess. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4. And just sitting there with her and her accepting me being there and chatting and just enjoying our meals together sometimes. And then as I grew older, we moved a little further away to Southwest Virginia, which is about an hour from Greenville, Tennessee. And so he dropped the restaurants for the most part, but then we started traveling on the weekends to my grandmother's house. So we would spend Sundays eating with her, which were usually large, like that Southern country meal, which was like pot roasts, green beans, potato salad, lots of pickles. And then our whole family would be there most of the time. And we would try to sit around the table, but there were so many of us that I would probably sit on the floor or on the couch or, wherever we would fit out on the front porch. So it was a very Southern um, feel. And we did that for, of course, many years until I went to college and was kind of on my own cooking. And I really didn't get into food that much, cooking a lot, until college or after college, where I got into baking. And I started baking out of just comfort
Mhm.
and a stress relief during school. And so that's really where it started. There was a lot growing up. But to be honest, like besides going to visit my grandmother and eating there, I grew up very that 90s diet of Hot Pockets and Pop Tarts and fruit by the foot and
Wow.
gotcha. So
That's
I'm,
totally not what I expected to hear. It's
yeah, no,
amazing.
I know how to use a microwave pretty well. So
So where was your grandmother's house in relation to where you guys lived in Virginia?
So it was in Greenville,
Okay.
but way out in the country. So
Hmm.
it took us about an hour and a half driving from Bristol, where we were in Southwest Virginia, to her house. So we made it. I mean, it was pretty far.
Yeah.
So it made those experiences pretty special. And of course, every holiday we
Yeah.
were there.
Yeah.
And I still visit her now, and she cooks for me. I'm gonna go in a few weeks. I'm excited. She's like, "What do you want to eat?" The usual.
My best friend growing up, her grandmother, we would go visit her. She was in Elizabethton, so
Yes, sure.
and it's a small town, very rural community in the mountains between Tennessee and North Carolina. And she always had a ham in the refrigerator, just always ready to be put in the oven in case anyone ever came by, which I think is the most Southern grandmother thing that I've ever heard. But it's a real culture, and the family life that happens around a Sunday meal. It's in some parts, it still is an incredibly important part of the fabric of a community.
Absolutely.
Where people come together and children play and they spend time with their extended relatives, and it's a really beautiful part of Southern culture, I think. But the burgers and hot pockets and stuff is hilarious because you're like this like amazing chef now. I was not doing anything like that.
Yeah, but I still love junk food. I can't deny that, and I let myself eat it every once in a while. And it's while I was in school, and I was in walking distance of school, so I would come home. We would either have leftovers or had ordered Chinese. The best thing is when there was Chinese leftover in the refrigerator. But then my mom cooked as well, mostly on the weekends, or my dad was very good at cooking breakfast. And that was one of my favorite things. Is every once in a while we would be able to sit around the table and have a nice big breakfast. But yeah, I still love junk food. I still love fast food. I can't help it. And it's just going to be the way it is.
So tell me about like when did this transformation start to happen where I remember I'm from a small town in a rural part of the United States also. I remember the first time I had sushi and it just blew my mind because it was so different. I'd never even heard of it before, these moments where your world kind of gets blown up and you see this new horizon that you didn't even know was there. Like, how did you start getting interested in farm to table, in sourcing, in this totally different world of food that you're really a huge part of now, really an integral part in this part of the country? How did you get? What was your transformation there? Like, when did that start to happen?
I think for some chefs, it's they have a really good timeline and story for that, and it took a little while. So after I left George Mason, I went to college near DC, Washington DC, for theater, which is not food. But
caveat there.
Sure. But while I was in college, my father passed away my junior year. And I dealt with that. But then after school, after I graduated, I wanted to move back closer to my mother to be with her, but not too close. So I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, which was about an hour away. Which ended up being it's a really wonderful, still small, but food town. And honestly,
I just want to mention for people listening, these are towns I'm sure most people have never heard of in Russia because they're smaller towns, but they're really beautiful places. If you ever want to just Google something that's a really cool town, Asheville is this small city in North Carolina located in the Appalachian Mountains, which are the oldest mountain range in North America and possibly the world. They're ancient, and they're like rolling. They're not big grand mountains, but they're beautiful. And it's a beautiful little community with amazing food, really cool people doing really cool things. And anyway, I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention that because a lot of people.
It's important because it's so special. It's such a special place. So I actually moved there and didn't know what I was going to do. because the theater scene in Asheville is not exactly the theater scene in Washington, D.C., believe it or not. And I went to hair school. I went to hair school and started doing hair, and that was the wrong answer. Um, but being a person who likes to work with my hands, with the theater and the hair and the makeup and all of that stuff, I started baking again in my little teeny apartment, and then realized that there was a wonderful culinary school in Asheville. And I went. I went for baking and pastry, and of course took some culinary classes as well. And after the first year, you're required to have an internship. And there was a little bakery outside of town that was actually in an old farmhouse in a garage, and it was a wood-fired bakery, and its name was Farm and Sparrow. And that's where I got my internship. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I knew I liked the way it looked and smelled, and I had to do this internship. So that's where I went. And it was there that I really figured out what sourcing was, and meeting farmers and using local ingredients. Dave Bauer, who owns that, well, it's not a bakery anymore. It's just a mill. He milled all of his own grains for the bread and pastry and taught me how to do that. And I worked there for the summer making croissant and pastry. And we went to the farmer's market and sold the bread and pastry there. And that's where I met more farmers. We would trade pastry for, ingredients, produce, meats, and it just really opened my eyes. And, we would be out there baking and cooking and walk out the back door and go up on the hill and pick blackberries for the pastries, or go get eggs, or, it was just really magical. And we would make lunches for each other in the wood-fired oven of like whole fish that we got from the market. But it was the production all week, and then getting up on Saturday mornings at 1 or 2 in the morning, going to the bakery, baking everything, hauling everything to the farmer's market, and then the community that you would, kind of be in the trenches with for the Saturday morning market. I fell in love with it. And so after that, my internship ended, but I heard of this other wonderful wood-fired bakery in Richmond, and that's how I found out about Sub Rosa, and then moved to Richmond to do that. But I feel very fortunate that I got to my first experience baking outside of school was at a wood-fired bakery, because after that, I quit school and realized that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't care about wedding cakes or chocolate or whatever was next for the next year of culinary school, and I just went after wood-fired baking.
I think it's so interesting because as far as I can tell, and I'm, my experience is limited as just a person, but cooking, being in the kitchen, is one of the few industries that still really operates on an apprentice level. Mm-hmm. That people really learn real time, much more than they learn by going to school and things like that. Like a lot of people, really, they learn by going to work, which is that doesn't really happen in a lot of industries anymore. We have these different ways of, you got to get a grad degree, or you got to do this or that. I'm a musician, and even as a musician, like, most people have degrees from a music school if you're going to be a musician, which is fascinating to me, because I don't think that was always the case in a lot of these professions that are really trades. You learn to trade. So it's amazing to me that being a chef, being in the kitchen, being in food, really still a lot of your the way that you learn is still really done through that. I think that's so cool.
I love it too. And, you can go to school, but, sometimes it's a little bit of a hindrance because whatever, if you're going into baking, if you're going into, the culinary side, I think seeking out exactly what you want, if you want to be a wedding cake maker or if you want to work on a line, it's almost better to knock on doors and send, letters like I did to Sub Rosa for a year trying to get in the door, because they're going to teach you good habits for the most part if you pick the right spots. And culinary school, all it did was get my foot in the door and allowed me to meet people. And it did get me that internship, which may have been hard if I hadn't been coming from an academic spot, but maybe not. If you're just persistent
Yeah,
and
you know about that.
you keep showing up and just show that you are interested and passionate and care. I think that can get you really far, as opposed to, going to school.
Well, I
So
love
for
this.
me,
I love this story about how you moved and you just kept showing up and asking and sending letters. I mean, that for me, that automatically qualifies you as someone who could take on starting their own business. Because
sure.
there's just so much risk putting yourself out there like that over and over again. The risk of rejection, the risk of
No.
there's so much that you really personally internally have to overcome. And so, tell me a little bit about what it was like. So we know that you worked at Sabrosa for several years, and
Mhm.
you lived in Richmond, and we've talked to several chefs connected to Sabrosa too, and it's an amazing place, a lot like the place in Asheville you talked about with the milling and sourcing. And so when you decided to open Two Fire, like tell us a little bit about that process, because that's really fascinating to me, and where you find the strength to make those big decisions, those big
Oh my
jumps.
gosh. It's wow. Well, working at Sub Rosa, of course, was probably the hardest job I've ever had. I loved every minute of it and I miss it. But it taught me how to work and how to work hard and how to structure your day. Um, Sub Rosa was still pretty new when I started, and we didn't have a lot of systems in place. So the team that I was with really helped, put those systems in place, make the day, a little easier, or make a timeline for the day and figure out how things work and how all the gears were going to have to come together to get our result. And I had never done anything like that before. So I was really learning in real time over the 6 years I was there. But also, being very much in the background. It wasn't my business, but I was, learning with everyone and really just trying to get things smooth and talking to farmers, meeting farmers, and putting, like I said, those systems in place. And so, as awesome as that was, by the end, I kind of felt like I was ready for my own voice. And so I loved cooking with the ovens, with the fire, and I started on my own kind of cooking more outside. I mean, I'd always kind of done that with camp. I like to camp and I like to be outside. I'm a big horse person. So I had been traveling and riding horses and camping and cooking and, kind of being immersed in it anyway. So I knew I wanted to bring those experiences that I had while traveling and at the bakery to others.
Mhm.
So how do I do that? I started cooking like one chicken at a time in my backyard with like a timer, and I'd sit there with the beer or something and watch it cook over 5 hours and decide if this is something that I can do. I there's no books really on the subject, one, of creating an open fire business. And there's
Mhm.
not that many people that do it. And you can't just buy equipment really unless you have thousands and thousands of dollars. So, while I was at Sub Rosa, I was trying to like kind of build this as something on the side. But over time, I had friends that could weld, and I would be like, wouldn't it be cool if you built this grill for me? And I did lots of research online, trying to figure out, I just have a small Outback, Subaru Outback. Like, I don't have a truck. It was just a lot of logistical questions. But luckily, I had friends that were willing to help out and build what I need to fit my, small car and break down. And so I got the grills built somehow. I had a art teacher from the local college build me a couple other pieces of equipment. And then I just started cooking for friends. And man, those first dinners were not good. They were fine. Nobody, got hurt or anything. But it was hard. And but I had to do it while working full time, at the
Right,
bakery.
right.
And so on the weekends and nights, or trying to coordinate somebody to take my shifts while I had this opportunity to go cook for these people I didn't know. So it was a few years of doing that and just doing it on the side and building what I needed as I figured it out. But like I said, there wasn't really anybody to talk to except
Yeah.
for, other chefs and maybe a couple over the fire books. But nobody tells you how to start the business, or also what you need, or insurance, or permits. Like, how do you permit?
Yeah.
There, there's a million questions. So over time, it just took trial and error.
Mhm.
And but somehow, over the years, it kind of all came together, and I got better at it, of course, because I had failed so many times, or done things in a roundabout way. But so I started it 2019, and it's taken this long to last year. Well, yeah, last year was the first year that I was doing it full time, was able to.
Amazing.
And yeah, pretty cool. And then, so yeah, I'm going into this year, and my two fire is my only source of income, and
Wow.
it's booked through the
Congratulations.
year. Yeah, I'm so
That's so
excited.
cool. So
But
it's interesting to me because one of the things you said was that it was a really rash decision to start it. And
well,
listening to you, it's been very systematic as well. I think when you're in the moment, sometimes these big life decisions feel very they feel very like rash, like
right,
oh, I'm making this huge leap, and this is it's totally unknown. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to fake it till I make it.
that's it.
And but at the same time, there's so much thought and so much planning and so much um, help and things that came in. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit of both, right? It's a little
So
bit of both for sure.
for sure. You can prepare and prepare, for however long, but there is going to be that moment where you have to be like, okay, I'm, busy enough on this creative end to leap off of this secure end,
Right.
but to get the courage to do that, it is difficult. Because you have to just really trust yourself and trust that you've created, a hard enough landing place, but
Yeah.
also there's just no way of knowing. And honestly, I was living in Richmond, and working at Sabrosa. And my husband and I bought a house about an hour away on the river in a teeny tiny little town. So he was also changing his career. So we were both changing careers at the same time. And so I was the first one to leave the house in Richmond, move to the Scottsville house because I had a job offer to guide horse trail rides in the area and then cook at the same time. And I did that, and that
We're like, there's only one person we know in the world that can do this job. So we have
yeah,
to
so it was like perfect. This will be great. It's two things I can do. But that failed. It failed quickly. It was 6 weeks, and I knew I couldn't work for this company anymore. And I had moved, my husband had moved, we had both left our secure spots. And I went back to working in a bakery.
Well, let me just mention this really quickly. So Richmond in Virginia is the capital city. And it's not a huge city, but it's a big enough city that there's lots of small restaurants. There's lots of independent bakeries and things like that. So it's got much more of a city feel than the more rural kind of mountain area that she is talking about, Scottsville, where she moved. Yeah, so I just want to mention that because it was a big transition in more than just security ways. Like there's a different rhythm of life. There's a different, your scenery is completely different. The people that live around you are probably more spread out, right? It's not, your neighbors are a little ways away probably,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And, there's no food scene. I will tell you that in Scottsville. So the nearest town, a bigger town, was 30 minutes up the road, Charlottesville. So when I left, the really, I thought, awesome, perfect job of guiding horse trail rides and camp cooking and doing these dinners in these beautiful settings, I went back up to and found a job at a bakery in Charlottesville while I continued to grow my business, Grow to Fire on my own. So it was a little bit of a setback.
Sure.
And I did that. I worked in that bakery for a whole nother year before I thought it was time to just make that leap again. So I made two leaps. The first one didn't work out so great, and then the second one, here we are. So that was
your husband also in food?
He's not. He was a tattooer. He did that for 20 years, and now he's a fly fishing guide. So
Wow.
also a big change. But so we're both pretty much, taking advantage of the agritourism in this area. There's lots of camping, hiking, but also vineyards. We're in Virginia wine country here. So there's a lot of people that come and stay for the wineries, and which is great for me because they need to eat, and a lot of these wineries don't have food. So I'll go and cook for them either at their Airbnbs or their lodges or at the vineyards themselves. So it's a perfect spot for what I do.
So it sounds like both of you and your husband, do you guys have kids?
No.
Okay. So you and your husband, yeah. You and your husband, it sounds like, felt this call to something really different, and maybe like a more, just being more connected to the outdoors in your daily lives.
Yep.
So one thing I love about my work, and I'm sure that you have the same feeling. There's a huge shift, really, when you go from the rigor of working in a bakery where the hours are brutal and relentless, and then having your own deal where every day looks totally different, right? Like, I mean, of course, you've got systems in place, I'm sure, like you said, but there is a huge flux about what your days look like. But if you could condense your day, like, could you give us a day in the life of Sarah Renie? Like,
Sure.
what does your normal day look like?
So if I have a dinner coming up, like I have one tomorrow,
Yesterday, Thursday, I do all of my shopping. I will go to wherever I need to go, grocery store, the farms, to get all of my ingredients. And today is my prep day. So I have, everything kind of organized in my fridges. And then today I have to make my sauces. Sometimes I make my desserts ahead of time, just to make things a little easier on myself. I learned that over the years. And so I'll get everything organized and packed today. I have my grills that need to go in my car, and the wood needs to be packed, and everything kind of Tetrised in. So tomorrow morning, I'm ready to roll out. Now, tomorrow I have a party for 20, but in the morning I have to meet some clients at a vineyard to go over their wedding venue. So I kind of have a dual day. I have to be at the vineyard at 10:30 to meet with clients. And then at the party, I start about 3 hours before the party starts. So I'll arrive, they want to eat at 6. So I'll arrive at the farm around 3 o'clock, and I will unload everything and set up my grills, get the fires going. And I cook mostly on site. So I did do a little bit of prep and just make sure everything is really organized. I don't have electricity. I bring water. So anything that needs to be blended or, chopped or anything needs to be done ahead of time.
Yeah.
But most of all the cooking is done that day. So I do need about a 3-hour window to get all that done and serve. That has evolved. And now I'm very confident in those 3 hours. It used to take me 5 hours. And now it's, kind of worked out. And then I'm usually there by myself, unless it's a much bigger party. So I have a little list of chefs that I can call to see if they're available to come help. And usually I can find friends to do that. But tomorrow I'll be by myself. And so I cook, I serve family style. So I'm back of house and front of house. And then I clear everything for them. I take all my dishes home with me. I douse the fires. I pack the car back up and go home, and typically unload the next day, because I'll probably be getting back around 10 o'clock tomorrow night, and then Sunday I'll unload. But Monday I have a photo shoot to do, so I have to prepare for that. And then Tuesday I have another lunch to do. So Sunday is going to be unloading, cleaning, and prep for the next days.
Wow.
So it's a little crunched right now.
That's amazing. So give me, what's your menu for this tomorrow night? Just because we're in the middle of winter here, and we have a pretty mild winter. It's not too harsh. It's no Krasnoyarsk or Siberia.
I don't want to complain.
But we do have obviously there's less produce available. So tell us what you're making. Like, what's this menu for tomorrow?
So the winter is very root based and greens based. I have a coal roasted beet and carrot dish that I do with a little bit of citrus. I'll throw all of those beets and carrots right into the coals, and they'll get like a nice black crust, and I'll peel all of that off and make a salad with some microgreens and, like I said, the citrus. And then I'm doing a grilled butternut squash dish. I just cut those squash in half and throw them on the grill, and they take about an hour to cook. And I do that with a miso butter. And today I'm going to be making a pumpkin seed brittle, so like a candied pumpkin seed on top. And then I have whole roasted chickens, which I do almost every dinner. They're kind of like my specialty. That's a dry rub on that, and they get basted in butter while they roast over the grill. And then I'm also doing skirt steak. So luckily those cook pretty fast. So it's usually a slow protein and then a fast protein.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing skirt steak with a pomegranate molasses chimichurri.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm doing pavlova, which I'm making today with a coal roasted pear on top and with a vanilla pastry cream. And then, of course, a little charcuterie board beforehand as well. So it's, it's still very bright and colorful to be in the winter. We're supposed to get snow tonight, so hopefully everything goes to plan tomorrow. But so I still try to keep those bright colors and still use acid and things to keep that palette nice and bright while we're eating a little more heavily for throughout the winter.
That sounds incredible. I want to come. Actually, I
Yeah,
might
sure.
crash this party.
I think you should.
Does your husband ever get conscripted to pitch in with some of the?
Yeah.
It's incredibly physical work. I mean, just
It is
getting the grills in and out of a car. It sounds like you got to be in pretty good shape to.
Yeah. Luckily, when I had them made, we had kept that into consideration. So everything breaks down decently small, so I can handle it, and things are pretty light. Of course, the wood is heavy. So, sometimes I'll have help, but I have such wonderful clients. A lot of times they'll help me too. So we kind of do that together. If that's, something they want to do, there's usually always offering help. Now, sometimes I do like to do it by myself because I do have a system. And sometimes when I have too much help, it gets a little crazy. But there's usually somebody there that can at least help me with the wood. And if not, I have a little dolly and I can just throw it on there. But I've never been to this farm that I'm going to tomorrow. And like you said earlier, every day is different. Every venue is different. I don't typically go and see venues, especially for these private parties.
Right.
So I don't know what I'm going to be rolling up on or how far I'm going to have to carry the grill. Sometimes it's far. So I'm like, this is my workout for the day and everything's fine. But so, it's always a little bit of a surprise. But like, honestly, my clients have been so wonderful. They try to make it as easy on me as possible. But it is part of it. And it is, just like working in the bakery, lifting the flour, and it's always been heavy. All my jobs have always been heavy. working in theater, doing, it's just been a lot of physical labor. And it's something I do need to keep in mind. How sustainable is this? How long can I keep this up? Yes, having a trailer would be to load all of my things in would be easier, but am I going to be able to park it in a lot of these places? Would a van be better? But will it get stuck in the mud? Because like I said, I just don't know exactly where I'm going to be. So it's just things to think about and kind of listen to my body about. And, now that I'm just doing two fire, I can kind of choose how much work I do. Of course, it's hard to say no to things, but I have started saying no to some of the things that just aren't going to work for me logistically, or I feel like maybe that's just going to be a little too difficult. So
I do think that there's something really interesting about how these career paths where we really are finding our way. It feels very maybe circuitous to get there. Definitely doesn't feel traditional. It's not like you went to med school and became right. Like it's not like this is the direction there. That's where I'm going. It's more of like a discovery, like a self-discovery along the way. And it's interesting. I remember hearing a TED talk or something years ago about how it's really not necessarily about having the most reach. Like it's not about having a huge audience. It's about having the right audience.
Right.
And it sounds like you've found that. It sounds like you found people that resonate with the heart of what you're trying to do, in addition to the excellence of it. I mean,
Sure.
it's amazing food. I have to say, it's delicious and
Well, thank
incredible.
you.
But like it's also about this the more like the deeper meaning of it, what's behind it, that you find people that's really probably they're looking for that as much as they're looking for a good meal. And
Right.
so I think that's fascinating that you find like by and large your clients are people that are really supportive and kind and interested in what you do and want to help. I mean, I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's, when I was first kind of coming up with this concept, I really was trying to channel that uh, energy. Sounds a little woo woo, but it's real. When I was traveling and camping and eating around the fire, literally out in the middle of nowhere, it did create this feeling for all of us. And that's what I think fire can do. It's warm, it's inviting, it's cool, it's fun to watch, it's mesmerizing. So it brings people together because it's a really awesome topic of conversation.
Yeah.
So not only am I creating food, but I'm creating or trying to create a centerpiece for people to gather around and be with each other. And it's a really easy topic starter,
Yeah.
is the fire and how to cook and what am I doing. And I teach classes for over the fire cooking as well. And it's always so much fun because there's a million questions, of course, and there's so many different techniques for people to learn. So it's an experience. And I think the people that hire me to do their parties, they're looking for an experience more than just a meal. But I do serve, along with that, I do serve only family style for the most part to create that around the table gathering feeling that I remember growing up
Yeah.
around my grandmother's table.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm more trying, the food is, makes it the food is good, yes, but what I'm really trying to do is create moments for people. And it's funny because I'm hoping that's what's happening. I don't really know, of course, what everyone's thinking or what they're taking away from it, but I'm hoping inside that they'll something to remember, that I'm creating something that they'll carry with them or want to recreate on their own
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, my
Well,
clients are
I
cool.
love this first question from our audience that's listening now. Do you listen to music while you're cooking? And whether or not you do, what kind of music do you like?
Oh, great. So I don't, not really well, when I'm cooking at home, yes, of course. And when I'm on my way to a dinner, yes. On my way home, absolutely. And it's been, I try to keep it light on my way there. So it's usually, um, let's see, a little bit, maybe like a Gillian Welch vibe.
Yeah.
So a little folky, a little quiet, a little calming. Something that I can sing to because that really gets my nerves down. I've done, I don't know how many dinners, but I'm always really nervous before going in. So singing in the car helps.
Yeah.
And then, on the way home, it's later at night, and sometimes I stop for a fast food burger, which sounds so silly because I don't eat. I don't eat at my, parties, and I'll probably listen to something a little different. I grew up listening to metal music. So it's usually something like that to kind of get my energy out.
Cathartic. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's usually something, a little harder, maybe Anthrax or Testament on the way home to, because my adrenaline's high.
Yeah.
And I get home and I'm still kind of buzzing from everything. So that helps get some of that out on my way home. So I have my McDonald's burger and my Testament on my way home. So. It's
I love it.
important.
Like
Music's
your
very
website,
important.
everything is so like beautiful and like farm and like
No.
pastoral, and like the food is so beautiful sourced, and then like you're like driving home like blasting Anthrax and slamming a McDonald's burger. It's
Yeah,
great.
I
Love it.
don't always get the burger, but it calms my stomach down sometimes.
Here's another great question.
Yeah.
What are some of the unique challenges to open fire cooking as opposed to cooking in a kitchen? And how have been the ways that you've been able to not just overcome those challenges, but use those challenges and even make them portable? I mean, that's kind of amazing too. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, not only am I cooking with just fire, so learning how to deal with the temperatures and things, but weather. I
Yeah.
I'm rain or shine, unless there is a big snowstorm or a tornado. I'm there.
Mhm.
So, learning to deal with rain. I have a couple pop-up tents, but it still changes
Oh yeah.
the dynamic because everything wet, it doesn't matter. So learning to just expect that, but you just have to do it over and over again. I've learned how to work with wind. Sometimes up here in the mountains, there's 40, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and that changes the temperature of what you're cooking very quickly. So that takes more wood, for instance. I have to keep the fires way hotter than I would, otherwise. I've cooked in hail. I've cooked in almost tornado. It's just, you have to really think on your feet and adapt. But sometimes, it's just going to happen. I mean, sometimes it's sunny and wonderful, and then a storm rolls in, and I'm having to cover all of my food with pans, pots, bowls, whatever I've got to keep things dry. But I usually travel with a tent just in case. So that keeps the rain off of stuff. But it's part of the experience. And like I said, luckily my clients understand. And but I've never not delivered, so I'm very proud of that. I have to adjust, but there'll be food.
That's
It's
awesome.
just an experience.
So do you have any like a way to advise a chef who's aspiring young person maybe, or someone thinking about just changing careers? Like, how would you get involved in open fire cooking? Do you think, is it that thing you just have to do it? You just have to try it and do it a million times, find people? What would be your best advice?
Even in just the few years that I've been doing it, I feel like it's gotten a little more popular. There's some Food Network competition shows that have been featuring over the fire cooking, and watching them now, I'm like, man, I really wish I had seen that before, because you're watching people literally struggle on TV with the same things that I struggled with. There are a few more books out as well, but honestly, you just have to go outside and build a fire and put food over it and in it. I think the biggest advice I got was starting with wood-fired baking. Or the funniest story that I heard is a friend of mine had just opened her wood-fired bakery and was asking advice from one of my mentors. And she was like, so I just build the fire in there in the oven? And he's like, yeah. And that was all he said. And she's like, okay. And so, but that's it. You just have to start. I started with a little fire ring in my backyard and got a tripod and hung one chicken over it and did that over and over and over again until you get a feel for it. But yeah, it's really, you can read every book, you can watch every TV show, but until you just try it at a small scale, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
and you'll learn. But yeah, it takes time and work, but it's really worth it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, there's some great questions here. Sorry. Okay, what's your very favorite thing to cook over a fire? Or it doesn't have to be fire, I guess, but your favorite and least favorite things to to cook?
Okay, it's gonna be the same thing. So when I started when I started this, I did start with these whole chickens. And if chicken is scary because if it's undercooked, it can make somebody sick. So I did start with these chickens, and I came up with a really good recipe and rub, and it took a lot of work, and it's really fun, and it's really satisfying because they are absolutely delicious. And I've evolved the cooking of them over the years to where it's, suits what I need to do. But I also hate it because it is scary, and it burns quickly, and then you can be burned on the outside and undercooked on the inside, and that's the worst. Every chef's worst nightmare is to serve undercooked chicken. And so that it's like the best thing that I do, but also I almost wish I hadn't started it. But it's one of those necessary things. But yeah, chicken. It's delicious, but man, it's difficult and terrifying at the same time.
So you mentioned that you're making a pavlova tomorrow night.
Mhm.
Is that also over the fire, or do you do that at home beforehand?
No, I'll make the pavlovas ahead of time, but I will have now. If I had a oven at the place, like a wood-fired oven, that I could. Sometimes people have those in their houses, which is crazy, but I would do that there. I can,
Okay.
make that happen. But I will be coal roasting the pears for that. So
Oh,
that'll
cool.
be my element, smoked salt and coal roasted pears for those. So I
Oh,
try to, throw it in there somewhere.
yeah.
Try
Do
to
you have
keep it
so
clean.
of course baking, you have a long history of baking,
Yep.
uh, but that's an oven, and so open
Yep.
fire baking is not really a thing, right?
Yeah, I can. So I'll do like desserts in Dutch ovens,
Uh-huh.
which I do a croissant bread pudding that is delicious. You can make bread in Dutch
Mhm.
ovens. Um, but if I want a little more refined
Yeah.
dessert,
Those are pretty
I
rustic, right?
yeah, I try to do that some of those elements at home in a little more control.
Yeah.
Uh, so I can, they can look really pretty,
Yeah.
not just served in your Dutch oven. But
Sarah, this has
yeah.
been such a great conversation. I have loved hearing all about you and your journey, and I'm amazed by what you've built and created, and just wish you all the best as you just keep following this path. And thank you so much from the American Center in Moscow for joining us tonight and talking about your amazing career. We're just lucky to have had this hour with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
All right. We'll see you next time. Well, we won't see you next time. You
Yeah,
might see
sure.
me next time, but there'll be something cool happening for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.